So the advice for today is comment your code, which I know we've just done. So the purpose of this video, I wasn't going to do one. I've got to go work in 15 minutes, but I thought I'm very opinionated on, and I've got a strong belief in comments. And I know there's definitely an opinion out there, a strong opinion against commenting, and that's been driven by the industry and people. And I've made a video on it trying to cover brief topics. And I'm pleased with the video because it's elicited a strong response, some positive, more negative, which is exactly what I expected. But as a developer and as somebody that feels very strongly about my opinion, and that's all it is, you're free to take it or leave it, but I feel very strongly about pushing the reasons for commenting and trying to overcome this negativity and the reasons why people think the purpose of a comment is to explain complicated code, which is just not the case. So commenting something that says logger.log and saying log it. The point of that comment is not to explain the fact that you're logging something that's obvious. The point of the fact is we don't speak code. I don't talk in this video and say if open brackets me talk equals true, close brackets cut. We don't talk like that. And in the same way, when we're reviewing code, when we're reading other people's code, when we're doing anything, in your head you're not going if open bracket this. You're saying, okay, so that means if the response dot, okay, so it's if the response is in that process of reading that code and converting it back into your language in your head takes time. So if nothing else, the benefit of code is to help you quickly read your code, but there's many more benefits. So slightly different than what I typically do in these advice videos, I'm actually going to pull up the comments on YouTube, and I've written a response ready. And then once I've written this response and thought about it structured, I thought it's good to actually probably do a quick video on this so that people see the main importance, because I feel like I covered more reasons and points in this comment than I did in the first video. So we're just going to switch over to the comments, and I'm going to basically read what I'm about to post online. And take no offense, this isn't a dig at anybody, this is my opinion again, and I try to portray that in what I'm saying. I'm strong in my opinion, and I have to be and I want to be. There's nothing wrong with being strong in your opinions, but at the same time, I'm not saying people have to comment and they should comment, but I'm not going to back down on what I feel is a strong and valid opinion, because that's through my experience as a developer. So let's just jump into it. Let's just take a quick look at my comment. So you can see here the top writing comment right now has got 5 likes at the minute, and this is the example that, you know, I comment log it, which is ioc.logger.log log some message. And obviously they reply log it no shit. And I can see exactly why people think this, and there's nothing wrong with that. I, as a developer years ago, would have thought exactly that, and I was exactly in that same camp. I used to be a non-commenter, and I used to hate comments, and I used to think, what's the point in that? But as you progress through your career, you realize comments aren't about commenting, funnily enough. They're not necessarily just about stating some complicated code. So I got this comment this morning, just saying it's so common I've had to explain to idiots at work. Now, the only reason I've really commented here is because, again, I don't call people that don't comment idiots, and I don't feel that people that do comment should be called idiots by other people. It's simply closed-minded. So, you know, I wouldn't call anybody idiots as such. You can do it in a jesting way, but, you know, that's what it is. So I started with this reply, basically, and I've tried to explain it constructively. So I'm just going to read it out like I say, because it's well thought out. So the point of comments isn't to explain complicated code. That's just one of the uses. And it's like saying an integer's only use is to store the number 5. So comments, methods, namespaces, everything else, adding automatic XML documentation to your code and IntelliSense. So basically that means if you comment on a method or a function or a class, then you're going to automatically end up with IntelliSense in your code, as well as MSDN style documentation. So that, I feel, is no debate, and I don't think that's what people have an issue with. It's more this style of commenting people don't understand. So then I've put commenting your code itself is not about explaining your totally elite code to somebody that can't understand it. And I feel this is the main reason people get abusive or really defensive about why you're putting pointless comments in code. Because basically they just simply feel that their code is, I only need to explain something if it's not obvious. And that is the whole purpose. That is not the point of comments, and that's what I'm trying to push. Don't think just because you've commented something obvious, that was the only point of the comment. So that, just keep that in your mind. And then I've tried to highlight just 3 points, because really there's not that many, but they're all very powerful. So one is to define what your code should be doing step by step. So this obviously means doing, declaring your variables, then checking a response, and then if there is a response, what do you do after that? And breaking down all your code segments into readable, bits of line, because that's what you're doing when you are reading, your code. You're doing that. You're going, okay, here's a function, here's what it does, and you read every single line to figure out what's going on. So the comments in one is so you don't have to do that thought. And it might seem at first that it's obvious what something does, but trust me, when you're reviewing code, say you go into a team and you're reviewing code, and you're working with 20 developers, and you haven't written that code, and your day-to-day job involves reviewing other people's code, you will massively appreciate when they comment their code, and you can actually see, okay, I can just read the greens, and then I can browse at the code after to make sure it's correct. But if you're not that interested in certain parts of code, and you're not really reviewing a certain part, you still need the understanding of that code in context. So you can really quickly just read the comments to know what code should do, and then focus on the bit that you need to do. So that's one of that's basically the point of defining what the code should do. The second is similar to the first, and it provides mini regions to group your code into larger chunks. And that's things like arranging, like declaring variables, acting, which I kind of mentioned here. So declaring in sections. So if you were arranging something, you'd declare your variables, and your comment might look similar to this. Then acting upon that, and that's where I'd say things like if the server returns true. And then you'd do something, and you'd write, not necessarily do something, but you'd write what you were going to do. So that's point 2. And point 3 allows developers who've not written your code to feel very comfortable that they're not misunderstanding your code, even if it's basic, and that they won't be afraid to tell a developer if they are an idiot, if they have return true, return false. And I'm using the word idiot here in like a joking manner because it was used here. So don't be afraid to tell the lead developer they're an idiot. Which they obviously wouldn't do. They'd simply come up to them and say, your comment says that it should return true, but you're returning false. And that's the concern. So they're the 3 kind of main points. And then here's the benefits. 1 I've just discussed is fast readability, so you can read through your code really quick. 2 is to spot errors, similar to this statement. And trust me, it helps a lot more than basic errors. It helps in complicated code as well. It helps scanning through code fast, which I mentioned when you code reviewing. It defines the sections we've mentioned. And then here's kind of my now opinion to try and really persuade non-commenters to want to comment. And this is the point I keep trying to say and I've just mentioned. So are you telling me that when you're reading your own code or you're thinking of writing code in your head, you're thinking of going, if open brackets response.myObject equals true, close brackets, open curly, or do you think in your head, if the response from the server is true, then return a successful response? And does that sound like my obvious comments? So that's kind of the point of what I'm trying to say there. That's my explanation, is to explain why I literally write if this, do that, and it sounds obvious. But now hopefully you read that comment and go, oh yeah, I see the point. It saved me, whatever amount of time it is, even if it saved you 2 seconds, 1 second, you times that by 100,000 lines, and you're talking days and days and days of saved time every time you have to look at that code. So there's big reasons for commenting. And that's what I wanted to get across here. So if we just take a look at the last little bit, just for completeness. And again, I'm not trying to be an arse here, but I'm just saying, perhaps if you stop thinking about comments as a singular purpose and more of a broader picture, you can embrace and appreciate them. And then basically the statement I always try to make to people, alternatively, just keep thinking people who comment are idiots. Those developers are more likely to get hired by my company at least, which is an honest statement. I would hire people if they comment more because it shows a greater understanding of a thing that is popular right now to not do. So it shows a lot in a developer that does that to me personally, maybe not to other companies, but to me, if nothing else. And as usual, it's all just opinions at the end of the day. And I can see from the responses to the comments, and it's a hot topic and lots feel passionate. So this is just basically me stating. So that's all I really wanted to cover in this video, is to again re-highlight and re-push my reasons for wanting to comment code. And to give an analogy, let's pretend you go to, well, not let's pretend, let's go to a supermarket. You need some food for the week. A supermarket in the UK is Morrison's. I don't know whether they're anywhere else in the world. We go into Morrison's and you're after some bread and milk and some honey, say. So what do? You walk into the store. It's obvious it's a food store. It's obvious there's aisles full of food, but you look above and there's comments that says milk. Now, it'd be obvious if you went down the aisle that milk's down that aisle, but they put a comment above to say milk. Oh, cool, I'll go down the milk aisle. You pick up your milk, you need some honey. You look up, you'll find signs, honey and sugar. So you go to the aisle, and there's your comment, there's your main comment. And then you look at the shelves full of honey, but it says honey. Then finally you pick up the actual honey off the shelf, and what does it say on the jar? Even though it's clearly honey, you can see it's honey, there's no doubt what it is. It's in a honey section. The label on the jar says honey. It is what it is. Humans speak their native language. They don't want to see symbols of what makes up honey. They don't want to see a chemical bond written on there. They want to see what it is, even when it's obvious. People like to be told obvious things. So as just a simple analogy, I hope that maybe also helps you, understand the purpose of comments even when they're obvious. A bag when you buy a cable and it says open here. But some people have clearly misunderstood that at some point in time that require a comment that tells you how to open it. The classic one is shampoo for washing your hair. Read the instructions on shampoo. To basically take out the shampoo, put it on your head and rub the shampoo in it. It couldn't be any more obvious. But there's a purpose behind it, like everything else. So again, basically, like I say, this video is nothing more than the previous one, just restating a few more facts, and hopefully we'll see what response we get from this one, whether we still get, if we get anyone that didn't understand it before now appreciating it, or whether we simply get more rants. Either way, it's cool. It's good for me, it's good for you, it's knowledge, it's shared, and we can get an opinion of what people think of comments in general. So hopefully this video was useful, and keep rocking.